We're going to get started in just a moment. Binyam, when you're ready, I'll see the slide go away.
Great.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. And I could probably say good afternoon and good night if you're on a different coast than those of us in the Northeast. It's a pleasure to welcome you to a series that has recently come back to our main stage in Brooklyn. And for this one, we thought it was appropriate to welcome you all from all zip codes and area codes and everything in between. This is a series here at Brooklyn Public Library run by my good friend Anderson Tepper, who I will turn it over to in just a moment. This is the International Writers Series, and it's a great pleasure to be putting together these two important international languages, football, as it's known in most of the world, and literature, books, the things that we in New York and around the globe all love so much. We're going to have a conversation here on Zoom, but it's also going to be streamed to our Facebook page. And I should also say I'm Joel Whitney. I work on the arts and culture side of things here at the Brooklyn Public Library. And we do robust programming all year round, including things that are going through December and the holidays and into next year. And it's a pleasure to see you when you come to our stages in Brooklyn, as well as when you are here with us on Zoom. And you can follow us on the landing page for our department at bklynlibrary.org/BPL Presents. BPL Presents is the handle for all our social media as well. So tonight we have three of the four people we advertised. Emilio Fraya is with us. Andres Neumann and Patrice Agang will discuss the upcoming World Cup in Qatar with Anderson Tepper. As I said, we lost Helen Habela to a conflict. And I'm going to introduce everyone so you can jump right into it. Emilio Fraya is the author of Sevastopol, which was published by New Directions in 2021. Andres Neumann, his new novel, Bariloche, will come out from Open Letter in January. And Patrice Agang, A Trail of Crab Tracks, the final volume in his epic Cameroonian trilogy, was published by FSG in June. And our moderator and curator for this wonderful series, Anderson Tepper, is co-chair of the International Committee of the Brooklyn Book Festival, and has written for the New York Times, Los Angeles Times, Vanity Fair, and World Literature Today, among other publications. So please give us your virtual Zoom claps and chat noise as I turn it back over to Anderson and our panel. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Joel, and welcome everyone. And really what a pleasure it is to be with three of my favorite contemporary writers who I know are also big soccer fans. Andres, I remember meeting you when Traveler of the Century came out and you signed it to me. You said, "Dear Andy, who scores a goal every time he reads a book." So that's a great thing that I have. But so I mean, it's hard to believe that it's been 4 years since Russia hosted the World Cup, and also hard to believe that it'll be happening in November. But I want to talk about this World Cup, what your thoughts are on the teams, the players, the host country, and more. But I want to start with a general question. I was curious how you all first fell in love with the game, and what are your earliest memories of the World Cup? For me, it was the 1982 World Cup and that great Brazilian team of Socrates, Zico, and others. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Who's starting?
Yeah, tell me your earliest memories and what World Cups do you remember? You know, the first memories.
Well, I can start if you are okay. So first of all, Andy, thank you very much for the invitation, and Joel also. And well, today, because of our meeting I searched it and found this my 99 World Cup sticker album, and this is like
Wait,
and
from which World Cup? 98?
yeah, for 1990
Italy.
Italy.
Oh,
Yeah.
1990.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
And like the US page with Tony Meola here.
Yes, yes.
Well, and I realized that the first contact I had with a World Cup, the first that I remember, because in 1986 I was too young, and was the match Cameroon and Argentina. Which opened the 1990 World Cup. It's very, and that's my first experience with a World Cup. So, and Cameroon was the fever of the World Cup with Roger Milá, and Argentina beat Brazil in the round of 16. 1-0. A goal that this goal for me, I think it's the most tragic and beautiful goal of all World Cups. The Maradona's dribble and pass that set up Caniggia to score
Yes.
the only goal of the match. And so, and I cried in a completely crazy and desperate way for hours. And it was really tragic. I was 8 years old in that World Cup, and I think it was my first experience of defeat, and it was something that until then I didn't know was possible, you know, and I was not aware that this could happen, and then happen, and it was like a very tragic moment, I think, and that's was my first memory of a World Cup, and I remember in this match, like Cameroon, the first match, the first World Cups match, like Cameroon against Argentina. I remember that in the end of the match, because the Italian crowns at San Siro stadium in Milan gave Argentina torrid reception during their stay. The national anthem was roundly booed, and in the end of the match, Maradona said like my only pleasure this afternoon was in discovering the Italians in Milan have stopped being racists. Today, for the first time, they supported the Africans, and for me, like this, and the whole story of Maradona in this World Cup is a fantastic. I think it's like for me the most literary and amazing football story on earth happening in this World Cup. Like the semifinal between Argentina and in Italy, that was in Maradona's home city of Naples at the Naples San Paolo Stadium. So
no, there's a lot to say about Maradona, both in 86 and 90, and even 94. But Patrice, my memory of 90 was Cameroon and Roger Milá, the goals he scored, especially the English game. Yeah, the England game.
I was looking at the dates and all that, you know, so many things changed. But the most important thing that changed, I think, is that during the 80s, I don't know how it was in the United States or in Latin America, but there was only one television station. There was no social media. So, you know, and for Cameroon, we just had television. Television came in 1985. So before you were watching, you were listening to football. You was only listening to it. And so it is with that, it is our introduction into television. And I suspect you will not have a time when television united people as much as it did during the 80s. Because then after that, you have a fragmentation. I mean, I even think of, musicians, the Madonna concerts, they had stadiums full, the Dire Street, it was massive. And football for us came there, 1986. I mean, for anybody who is Cameroonian, it is not necessarily 1990. 1990 was kind of the, 86 was, I mean, even if you had your enemy, you cross the street, you
were watching together.
It was insane. Meaning, it was a level of, I don't know if one can capture that in a certain sense of electricity. And I actually remember when you grow up, you always have some feuds with people here, the small things, skirmishes. This guy is an asshole, that other one. But, the first game of Cameroon was, I think it was against Spain or something like that. It rushed and hugged. And then I noticed, oh, this is actually the asshole. I just say whatever. And that's my memory of it. It is really 1986. 1990 was kind of really, it was the apotheosis, if you want. But 1986 was, it still remains mythical for the reason really that that I just said. And particularly in Cameroon, because television just came, so people will not watch the game at home only. So you do not have that many stations. So it means people will actually fill up large spaces for only one television. So that was, therefore, it was such a massive event. And after that, honestly, we never had an event like that. And maybe I can add to it, in 1984 in Cameroon, for Cameroon was very tragic because you had a massive coup, an attempted coup, and it was very bloody. So people were really frightened. People went on the ground and went into exile or whatever. So it was kind of, even until today, 1984 is a cutting, it draws a bloody line in Cameroonian contemporary history. So 1986 was kind of a reawakening of people to joy, if you want.
And Andres, there's a history of political connection to the World Cup in Argentina. I mean, they hosted in 1978 and won at home.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, highly tied to politics. First of all, I can't avoid to mention, the situation in Qatar. This is not the first country hosting a World Cup which has horrible things to hide or to show. And indeed, my birth country was one of the biggest examples of that. But I feel the need to mention, all the dead workers and the LHTB movement. And I'm very sad that none of my two teams are wearing, one of the multicolor laces. That's really a shame. That said, it's very interesting to trace both the history of the Argentine national teams and Maradona related to politics. I will try to sum it up quickly. I was born in the 77, meaning that when the World Cup was hosted in my country, it was really the worst moment of the dictatorship. Everybody was being killed or kidnapped, including my own family. And I don't remember it clearly because I was just, 2 years old or something. But my father told me about it, so I was aware of that when the next World Cup happened. Was the 82, and that was at the same time at the Falkland War.
Right.
So there was definitely a conflict with flags in my house because I didn't get why my parents weren't, shaking the national flag. And that was obviously because, the regime was using the patriotic identity, as a form of support to the dictatorship. So it was like kind of hard dividing the support for your country and the support for the government. So, and then the 86, which is like my paradise memory, related to soccer in my childhood was, of course, like the redemption of the war and these two incredible goals actually
Right.
that scored Maradona. One was illegal, and it was a kind of revenge against, you know, the
Yeah.
United Kingdom, British Empire, or whatever you want to call it. And the second was a form of art, like it was
Yes.
like cheating and then a masterpiece. So if you take those two
Yeah.
goals in the 86 against England, you can see the range, that Maradona was capable of doing, you know,
Yes.
like cheating and doing art, the dirty and the sublime, and pretty much summarizes who Maradona was. But it's really interesting to think that if we follow what Maradona was doing in every World Cup, you can totally get the politics in my birth country. Because in the 78, Maradona literally disappeared from the team, just like thousands of people. He was supposed to be called for the national team. He was playing the friendly games pre-World Cup, and in the
And he was
last
very
minute,
young. He was
yeah,
very young.
he was too young indeed.
Yeah.
So the coach decided last minute not to bring him to the team and to pass him to the sub-19 team, which, by the way, won the World Cup in Tokyo the following year. So he disappeared from the team, just like half a country. Then in the 82, in the middle of the war, Maradona received like a red card.
Right.
At the same time that the dictatorship was being rejected by people finally, you know, and receiving as well a red card, he was rejected. He received a red card against Brazil, I think, after a painful loss. Then in the 86, all the country was having faith in democracy again. The country seems to be rebuilding. Everybody was happy, including my parents, finally. I remember it like a really happy memory. And of course, Maradona did this gesture against England, which was read definitely in political terms in Argentina, not only sport terms. Then the 90, the country entered a very dark period again, full of, well, I'm not going there because it would be too long, but it was a really bad precedent and a horrible period. And Maradona, you know, was injured. His decadency began there. And by the next World Cup in the 94, the American World Cup, he was found guilty of doping just at the same time that the country was falling down again. So I find it very interesting that the temperature, the mood that Maradona was in every World Cup was pretty much the same that the whole country. And to finish regarding what Emilio said about the Argentina-Brazil match in the 90, I think that was one of the most unfair victories that I have ever witnessed, but it was very much in football style, because what I like in soccer, well, we say football, the soccer style, because what I like really much about soccer, and it's pretty unique compared to other sports, is that the margin of unfairness and justice is huge. It's the most human game. It's the most human game. You cannot say I was better playing tennis, but I lost. You cannot say I was playing golf, I deserve to win, but I lost. I mean, if you lost, you deserve to lose. But in soccer, indeed, you can be clearly worse than your rival. You can get what you don't deserve, or you can not deserve what you did. So that match was a really good evidence of why soccer is so full of accidents and is absolutely unpredictable and is like painfully beautiful, because not always the good wins.
I think we'll probably come back to Maradona. I want to talk a little bit more about him, but Emilio, I want to talk more about this idea of political repercussions of the World Cup, and specifically the 2014 World Cup in Brazil. Tell me again what happened. I mean, didn't that ignite a whole street protest and grassroots movement, the 2014 World Cup? And I'm also interested in if your recent elections in Brazil had any effect on the perception of the national team.
Yeah, well, I think in 2014, like the broad appropriation of Brazil's national colors by the right began in 2014 and 15 during the protests against the government of Dilma, and have since become they become symbols of Bolsonarismo, of Bolsonaro, no? And so I think this year with the victory of Lula, the World Cup gives Brazil fans the chance to reclaim the yellow jersey from far right, no? Because the shirt started to evoke shame and disgust. You know, the progress people don't feel comfortable wearing the shirt on the streets for fear of being mistaken for a Bolsonaro supporter, and to avoid this kind of confusion, the progressive Brazilians are was embracing alternative versions of the jersey, like most of them of the number 13 in the back, that's the Lula's number, or a red version of the Brazilian jersey. And so I think there is a struggle over the jersey, a fight for like the national symbols, and well, yeah, in the streets of Brazil today, wearing the Brazilian jersey has become a political act. So, and I think since 2014 until now, we have this kind of atmosphere. So, and well, and one interesting thing, like the president Jair Bolsonaro, the ex-president Jair Bolsonaro, well, he has managed to associate his own political persona and his bid for a second term in office to this shirt, and also, and he well, he used it to wear jerseys from a lot of Brazilian teams also, like very populist thing. And I'm very proud of, I'm a São Paulo supporter, that is like that it's São Paulo was the only soccer team in Brazil that Bolsonaro didn't wear the jersey. Because, and it's very interesting thing, but yeah, I think since, well, sorry.
No. I was just going to say that I'm interested in soccer players who've gone into politics, by the way. And I was thinking of Romario. Is he still in politics? And then there's George Weah, of course, in Liberia. And yeah,
Romario now is a senator, and it's a very, I don't know, well, very right-wing.
Really, he is?
Yeah, he is.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, Romario is a right-wing
wow
senator, and I think a lot of soccer players in Brazil, they are Bolsonaro supporters, like Daniel Alves,
Neymar.
Yeah, Neymar. That's what I was going to ask. Neymar.
Yeah, no, Neymar.
Okay,
Neymar is like.
I'll maybe like to jump in there. Just first of all, it's a small correction. In my mind, because I was fairly young during those times as well, 1982, 86, I was 12 years old, 16 years old. It's a little bit blurred in my mind. And so that is somehow the moment when Cameroon was, I'm coming to what you're talking about. That is when Cameroon was ascending in football in Africa. So the World Cup was in 1982. That is where Cameroon was qualifying.
Okay.
Cameroon was not qualified in 1986. I would like to correct that.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Cameroon had a dominance in the Africa Cup
okay,
successively. So in my mind, the two came a little bit together because it was really rapid. Every
Pat-
second year, Cameroon was winning, so it didn't stop winning. But what
Patrice,
is
can I,
important? Mm,
go
yes,
ahead.
yes, what is important about the politics of football is that Paul Biya, the president of Cameroon, one can say right wing as well, if you want to have those spatial ideologies. In Africa, one doesn't use right wing or left wing, but let us use it. So Paul Biya came to power in 1982. So that is when Cameroon actually became a soccer nation. So by qualifying as the first African country to the World Cup, so you can imagine it was a landmark. And he automatically embraced it, particularly because he wasn't elected, he was handpicked. And so soccer gave him the popular foot that he never had. So that he actually never had. He has been in power since 1980 until now he's president. So for 40 years straight.
Right.
And so he embraced it in the sense of calling himself the Lion Man. So the soccer team is the Indomitable Lions. So he is known as the Lion Man. So you can imagine that you will never disconnect Paul Biya from soccer. That's the only that's the only claim to fame he has, and that these are actually his only victories, the symbolic victories. And as such, all soccer players identify with the ruling party. It makes sense because opposition doesn't have any space in Cameroon. If you want to have a public space as a soccer player, you'd better be with the ruling party. Otherwise, you will not even play. So, which is what they do. So, as such, those old players of the 80s, when they retired, some of them actually became politicians as well, mayors, things like that. And it was always the ruling party. So you will not have any soccer player who is not with the ruling party. That is the rule. That's the rule, if you want. Even
Socrates was famously, right, an organizer, union organizer, but players.
Samuel Eto'o will have no chance.
That's what I wanted to ask you, Patrice.
Zero. When he started, because most of them in Cameroon come from popular neighborhoods, social conditions, and places where one will expect the opposition to win if there was democracy.
Patrice, I want to ask you about Samuel Eto'o. We were talking about Maradona, and I know there's been some great movies that have Maradona. There was The Hand of God that came out, an Italian film. But I'm wondering about fiction and novels and your work. Have any of you written about soccer and players? And Patrice, I know you told me that your recent novel includes Samuel Eto'o is in the book. So tell me how you used him as a character and why.
Yes, the first thing is I had to come to the United States to see, you have here somehow the myth of looking for the baseball novel, or
right.
Right, Philip Roth, and even I had a few here. I simply came with a few like these. Infinite Jest, it is tennis novel, things like that.
Right.
In Cameroon, it's quite difficult, not only because literature doesn't have the imprint it has in Latin America, but also because even though it is popular, you may have noticed the players who play in the national championship in general do not qualify to the World Cup. For instance, this year, only one player of the national championship qualified to the World Cup, and that one it is Samuel Eto'o who decided he should do that, because the guy won the Ballon d'Or, the Golden Ball, and he felt that would be quite shameful if the guy who is playing in the national championship doesn't even make it to the World Cup. What I'm trying to say is that all the world team, Cameroonian team, all of them play from China to France to the United States to wherever. So you see, literature functions quite differently. It goes from the grassroots. So there is a disconnect there. Since 1990, really, because after the explosion of football in Cameroon, most of those players stayed outside of Cameroon, and it continued that way. As such, they don't even have, I don't have the Cameroon nationality anyway, so most of them don't. So they come to Cameroon as, for their holidays, and they go to the beach, and that's it. And it seems to me there is a disconnect there, and I find it very difficult for a writer to tap into such a phenomenon called football that appears only on television and doesn't have a social repercussion. As far as my novels, Samuel Eto'o, you cannot forget him because he has a media imprint, and he also was smart enough to have himself named the head of the Football Federation last year. So he's trying something new. He's trying to build up a return of those football players. I love him. We all grew up with him, loving him because he's very charismatic. He's a nice guy. So I included him in my last novel, in the dark novels. Because I think he actually has so much positive energy. Of course, he's a controversial figure. He has all those girlfriends, all those children around, and there's always one child popping up from wherever. So, but we love him. He's flawed, but he has all those qualities. So I use him in that respect. But I suspect if there was a football novel from Cameroon, and I suspect either Cameroon or Senegal would produce that.
Yeah,
it will probably be a football star who comes back home.
Yeah. Andres and Amelia, there's a tradition of Latin American writers writing about soccer. I'm thinking of Galeano, of course, Eduardo Galeano, Juan Villoro.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, these two are one of the two greatest writers having written about soccer, Eduardo Galeano and Juan Villoro. There's as well an essayist from Spain who is not, I'm sure, translated into English, Vicente Verdú, Verdú, V-E-R-D-U, who wrote a very good, serious book halfway through politics and philosophy and literary essay. As for fiction, it's interesting to remark that we haven't got as much fiction as we could have expected, considering the impact that soccer has had in our lives. There is no prestigious tradition in this regard, although that is changing now. But I would say, I would mention a few exceptions. Mario Benedetti, the Uruguayan writer, has written good short stories about it, and is very well known and translated into English, I understand, Mario Benedetti. We can also mention, I think that there's a strange case, by the way. Roberto Fontana Rosa. He was an Argentinian narrator who has written quite a few books on soccer. But I was mentioning the strange case of Jorge Valdano. I'm going to write all these names down later. Jorge Valdano was a football player, a soccer player. Yes. Sorry, I cannot call it soccer. It's so hard for me. Valdano was a soccer player. He played for Real Madrid and for the Argentinian national team. He played the World Cup, the '86 World Cup. So he was the champion, and he even scored the goal on the finals. He scored, if I'm not wrong, the second goal against Germany. And he actually scored 4 goals in that World Cup. And he was a top scorer for a few years in the late 80s. And this man was a very well-read and cultured man. And he was one of the very first soccer players in history of soccer, at least in the Spanish language, who tried to join literature and soccer, he used to write very good articles and essays, and he compiled a collection of anthology of short stories on soccer like 25 years ago. Cuentos de Fútbol, Soccer Stories. And that was the very first time that I was aware about the small and growing tradition of writers writing on soccer. And this man, Jorge Valdano, he's still alive. He was a very good friend with Maradona. And then they, of course, were angry at each other because Maradona was unbearable in the long term, but they were very good friends and teammates. And he wrote very brilliant stuff, both about Maradona and the game in general. And but my point is, and in Spain we do have finally as well David Trueba. David Trueba is a very good friend of Guardiola's, and he's a wonderful, yes, I will list these authors, of course, and he wrote a very good novel called Saber Perder, more or less to know how to lose, knowing how to lose, or to learn to lose, whatever. And these are my list of cases of good writers on football, on soccer. But I was going to say two more things very, very shortly. First of all, the best documentary, in my opinion, on Maradona was made by Kusturica.
Yes,
Emil
yes, I
Kusturica.
agree.
It's a very weird movie about two massive egos trying to surpass the other one. I think the only person able to show his own ego in front of Maradona was Emil Kusturica, and it's very right visually, and it's a very interesting
I agree,
film.
Andres. Yeah.
And the second thing is that I think we're getting very interesting literature now from women, because I can't think about one single book that I have read about the game written by a woman, and that's of course sad and worrying. And now that the female soccer is getting popular everywhere, I'm sure we're getting the good fiction that we haven't been we haven't got so far, with these few exceptions. I'm going to write these names and I'm passing to the next colleague.
Patrice, I know you're working on a memoir. Is that right? Will that involve some soccer memories for you?
Yeah, I'll maybe like to join my voice to what Andres was saying in terms of listing some authors from that, at least from the African continent. You have, I would say, the first author who tapped into soccer a little bit is Sonia Laboutansi. Simply the energy of running and and all that. Max Lobé, a long way from Douala, involves a young, youngster who wants to become a soccer player and crosses the desert, like many.
There's a book I read several years ago, Fatou Diome's.
Yes, exactly. I was coming to that.
Yes.
Fatou Diome, The Belly of the Atlantic.
That's it. Yeah.
It is. It taps into the energy of the youth and soccer. That will be Senegal. And as far as Cameroon is concerned, is Eugène Ebode, who was himself a soccer player in his youth, and who his books are not translated into English. But his first books use soccer as a metaphor, present football players, etc., etc. So these are the writers I think of who use football as a touchstone to telling stories. Now, as far as my own my own relation to soccer myself, if it is my autobiography, is that I think I'll phrase it this way. Tupac Shakur say that when I start with Tupac, that I'm trying to lie here. Tupac Shakur say that if you think that all Black men can play basketball, just look at me, I cannot. Something along those lines. But we all know that he could rap. The same with me. I cannot play football at all. So I don't even play. And that is my autobiography. It has a lot to do with my mother because she essentially banned any way of going out to play. And she just had to do it when I was young. So I didn't come into the tradition, you see.
Mm.
And in Cameroon, it's so competitive, and back then it was because it is played in the popular neighborhoods. If you cannot play, you don't have a spot. Full stop. So you're out. So it is decided when you are young there, you don't have a spot. And those, I think of the cruelty of it. They really don't joke. You are out. And it is enough for you to be out, I think, 2, 3, 4 times. As a child, you lose patience. You move on. So that's somehow my story, you know.
You know, you're talking about Maradona, the documentary, and I'm thinking, Emilio, there's such great characters that Brazilian players, and I'm thinking of Garrincha, like the documentary and a book on Garrincha, and of course there's Ronaldinho. There's so many interesting Brazilian players, you know, their lives.
Yeah, in fact, I don't know, Andres, if you watched the Asif Kapadia documentary about the Naples years of Maradona.
Wonderful. That's very good too. I was thinking about that one too. It's on YouTube, I think.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
This is brilliant. Yeah, I remember that when you were talking about this. Yeah, and about Brazilian, well, we have a very well-known Pelé documentary.
Yes, of course, and a feature film, right?
Yeah, and well, but for example, in literature, I think we don't have like great or very important books about soccer. It's weird in Brazil that this and we have like Nelson Rodrigues that wrote a lot about like chronics about football, and they are about soccer. They are fantastic, and more nowadays, like the contemporary, like there are two very good books about soccer that is called like in free translation is like The Paradise is Very Cool. It's from a writer called André Santana. That is a very interesting one because it's about a Brazilian soccer player that goes to Islam country, and he converted to Islam, and he started to play there, and it's a very interesting and mainly nowadays with the Qatar World Cup. And I think this book was written like 10 years ago or something like that. And we have another one, Sergio Rodriguez book called The Dribble. And I think for like these two, they are like the most famous contemporary books about soccer. And we don't have like a big tradition of writers written about soccer in Brazil. And for example, the modernists like Clarice Lispector, Guimarães Rosa, I maybe I'm wrong because I don't remember, but I don't think they wrote about
right.
And well, and one writer that I love the things that he wrote about soccer, it's Pasolini. I think
the Italian writer, did you say? Pasolini?
Pasolini, yeah, the Italian writer. One of the most beautiful connections between football and literature. I think, yeah. And
was he writing about Italian soccer, or what was he focusing on?
Yeah, and about his passion and his experience, because he used it to play soccer.
Really?
Yeah, and he created like two categories, like a poetic soccer and a prose soccer, and he to him the Brazilian style was like at that time was poetic soccer based on dribbling and non-linear opening of this kind of unforeseen spaces, as opposite to the linearly responsible prose soccer prevalent in Europe. And so it's very interesting. It's fantastic. It's brilliant.
That's interesting. I wonder if it's been translated into English. I haven't seen any of those books.
It was clearly before most soccer players of the global South ended up playing in
Italy. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
I want to just let the audience know to put in some questions. If you have questions, we have about 10-15 minutes left, and we'll get to questions. Andres, you wanted to say something?
Yes, very shortly. First of all, I agree that we don't have like a classic regarding or involving soccer. I was thinking about Underworld by Don DeLillo, which begins with a long scene on baseball, I think. It's like a really long passage. I don't think we have a similar thing in our, like one of our classic contemporary big novels, starting with a soccer game and doing it with a complex language and prose, which seems to reflect a kind of prejudice about what's literary or not. It would be interesting to think about. And the second thing is that when Emilio mentioned the theory of the poetic or prosist players, I couldn't help but remember what happens in Granada, a city that you do know very well, and because you came and visited us not long ago. Well, Granada, as you know, is the city where Federico Garcia Lorca was born, and is full of the radiance and the trauma of Lorca's life. So Granada is mainly a poetic city. Almost no novelists live here. I'm just about the only one, almost. I do write poetry as well, but I mean, I'm full of poet friends, and they're everybody here. But you cannot find a single Latin American novelist but me. But you can find lots of poets. And it's very funny because in the Granada Book Fair every year, they organize a soccer game between poets and narrators or storytellers. And I think this is the only city where the poets always win.
I love that idea. I'd love to see that game.
But I think it is maybe the more I think about it regarding Africa, I think it becomes a little bit clear to me why literature happens practically at the exclusion of football, even though football is so popular, and literature plays out in popular neighborhoods very often. So they don't essentially meet, and the reason is the politics of it. It's that the ruling parties essentially live off football, and George Weah may be even not even an exception, because if he became president as well. So ruling parties need that populism, that simply forgetting oneself, that drug, that unity behind one cause that is not very much questionable. And therefore, from the very beginning, writers are critical of that. It is fairly difficult, I would say, even in Cameroon, if I take all writers around my age, even before, who had a certain sense for football. Now, Mongo Betty himself, a very much critical Cameroonian writer, he was a football player.
Oh, yeah?
And you really need to look into his life to discover that he used to play football, because he would not even mention it. He would simply shut the window, and yet he was playing football. The Nationalist Party of Cameroon, UPC, when it went underground, it used to have football competitions because that is the way through which you could recruit young people. The Anglophones now, they use football as a tool of recruitment. So it's a strong connection between football and dissent. As far as Cameroon is concerned, one cannot talk about football without having a certain involvement between the popular and dissent and even football. But the master discourse really is that ruling parties coerce football and therefore makes it, make it impossible for writers to really let themselves go there. It is a shame, particularly because Cameroon is so successful. And if you want to make money, just write a football novel that includes Cameroon. That's, you have a tour running around and it will be translated everywhere. But Cameroonians don't want to do that.
The little time we have left, I want to ask the three of you about this World Cup in your countries. I mean, what are you expecting? Argentina, Cameroon, Brazil. What are your hopes? What do you think about the play?
It's a tough one.
And of course, Messi.
Playing against Brazil in the same league is really killer. I don't know who. I don't know who came to that idea. You can put so much energy in Cameroonian, you can dope everyone. But that one is tough.
It's going to be hard to get out of that group, right?
It is difficult. I'm being honest here. I'm giving it away. I'm saying you got
but
it.
No expectations, no pain. So it's a very smart move not to expect anything.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you suffer a lot. You see, I've got like 2 national teams since my early childhood. I'm supposed to support both Spain and Argentina, who funnily enough have never met officially in a World Cup. They were just about to, in the 86, they were just about to, but Spain was strangely lost against Belgium in the quarterfinals. Spain had a massive team. Butragueño, Mitchell, all the Real Madrid stars. It was a beautiful team, and for some reason they were unable to win, and they lost on the penalties, and that's why Maradona scored 2 goals against Belgium. That was the only time. The rest of the history, for some reason, I haven't have to face such a tragedy. But I was going to say that I have witnessed World Cups both in Argentina and Spain, and I tend to support the foreign team. So when everybody here in Spain are expecting for Argentina to lose, I try to root for Argentina strongly. And now that I'm going to Argentina, and all of my friends will be supporting Argentina and hating Spain, I suppose I will have to play the role of the foreigner again. But of course, I have 2 chances. In all honesty, there are 2 different situations. Spain has a very young and almost anonymous team. No one is expecting a great result. All the great players have either retired or been, like not called for the team. I think it's a very good collective team with no stars. Might be a surprise, although I would be not surprised if they don't win a match. So they could be like the dark horse. I think they say that, like a hidden candidate. Whereas Argentina is supposed to perform good, and everybody will be really disappointed if they're not. And of course, we have Messi, and we all feel that the last chapter in the Messi novel should end with a World Cup. It will be like a kind of Johan Cruyff or Di Stefano's case, those great players that never won a World Cup. Actually, we have 2 of them, Johan Cruyff and Di Stefano. So if we want to really compare Maradona with Messi, Messi needs a World Cup, and I really hope he makes it. But I think that, France is getting injured every single day.
Yeah, I saw that. Benzema's injured. Yeah.
Next week, there will be no starters in France, so that helps, really. So I think it will be really Brazil, which is the best team, probably. So if Brazil makes some mistake on the injustice again shows up, maybe Argentina can win, but I would be surprised if Spain performs good. But that would be maybe a reason why to expect a good performance by Spain, because no one is really worried about them.
Yeah, they're an underdog. Emilio, are there high hopes for Brazil?
Yeah, and everybody's talking about Denmark.
Denmark, okay.
Denmark, I think is like everybody's talking about them, but I didn't watch any.
Come on, let's be serious.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think that there is a sign that Brazil will win this year's tournament, Andres. Brazil won in 2002, the year
Right.
Lula won his first presidential.
Oh,
I
nice.
see.
So 20 years later, the story will repeat itself, maybe, I don't know. And so, but well, I think this Brazilian team is it's the best team of
Recent years.
recent
Yeah.
years, for sure. And we are very very sad about Daniel Alves, like, because and I think the Brazilians and didn't want that Chichi and call Daniel
Yeah.
Alves, but I think the rest, the team, besides Daniel, the team is very good. I think Argentina is very strong this year. In fact, I think Argentina and Brazil, they are like.
How about? Go ahead.
Germany also, because
Right, Germany's very strong.
they are always strong, but I don't know this year.
How about Portugal and Ronaldo? With all this talk about Ronaldo these days.
No, please. No, please.
And England?
Maybe even
Good team.
France,
Good team.
good chances. But I'm still rooting for Brazil, though. I think
Yeah.
all of us are a little bit Brazil fans. That's how you grow up. You can't simply change it. That.
Yeah, me too. So where will you be watching the World Cup, and will it interrupt your work this week, your work schedule? How will you figure it all out?
I will be in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, and
Really?
really movingly so, because it's been almost 5 years since the last time I
Wow.
visited. I'm not going there for any reason related to football.
When do you get there, Andres?
Next week I'm going there.
So you'll
for
see the first week at home, and then you'll be in Argentina.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And I'm really excited, to gather with my Argentinian friends. Really, in Argentina is a really crazy experience of these World Cups. People are behave really weirdly. I remember when I was in the school, and the female teacher of mathematics interrupted the class because Argentina was playing in the 90 World Cup, I think.
Yeah.
It was a game against Romania or Russia. I'm not sure, one of the last on the first round. And if Argentina lost, we were out. And even she refused, to teach because of the game. So it's I mean, the difference between other countries, I guess, is that people who don't like soccer or even hate it in Argentina stop and watch the national team's destiny as if a patriotic duty rather than taste for the game. So it will be really crazy. And and in Spain here, no one is particularly excited, I think.
Really? I remember meeting Eduardo Galeano years ago and talking to him, and he said, I'm interested in this difference between watching it socially with a big group or watching it alone. And he said many games in the World Cup, he wants to be at home alone up front of his TV. So I'm interested. Are you watching it with friends, with a group, or solitary at home?
I personally haven't decided yet. It depends on how far it depends on how far Cameroon goes. At the beginning,
of course,
it's essentially not worth it at the beginning because there's that competitive energy is still missing.
Yeah.
And so therefore, quarterfinal, semifinal, etc. There you go socially. It goes like this. If Cameroon is beats Brazil, obviously I'm going to be social now. I'm going to look for all Cameroonian associations to join and watch with them, and there are so many of them. So that one is without any doubt. But about Cameroon, I said before that football in general in Cameroon is related to television. and television is kind of going downstairs in a way, and they are trying to revive it by having large screens outside. And the more, the higher Cameroon goes, the more it is clear that you have a national holiday. So it is not even a matter of a teacher choosing, is that the school is closed. And I was reading your quote there, the quote from Pasolini, where he was saying that, cinema could not replace theater, but football did. I think what he underestimates is that probably nobody closed the whole country for theater or for cinema. And yet that's what happens for football. You don't have any choice. You simply have to go, because the party is national. You have many reasons, of course, not to go, but it's simply foolish. All your friends are going, so just join the party. Yeah.
Emilio, I remember the 2014 World Cup. We were in the office in Times Square, and Brazil was playing, and I wanted to go out to Little Brazil, as a block in 46th Street in Manhattan, where they had the outdoor screens. And I was getting ready to go, and then the goals started coming, the Germany-Brazil game. And of course, I didn't go out, but what an awful experience to watch that on TV.
Yeah, and well, I was with friends, and for me, like in World Cup, I like to watch the matches with friends, but to watch the matches of my team in Brazil, like São Paulo, I hate. Yeah. I need to be alone I hate to watch with other people. And Brazil and in the World Cup, I think it's like a social thing, and it's like as Andres mentioned about Argentina in Brazil, it's the same.
Of course.
The country, it comes to an almost complete standstill, and like the bank holidays are declared and during the days of the matches, this kind of things. So it's impossible to be disconnected of this experience. And well, for my lucky, in 2014, I was with friends in like a kind of party, and so that was like a little bit less traumatic for me. And in fact, like 2014, I think because this kind of political issues that we are, this World Cup will be very interesting for us, I think, because with the election of Lula, I think we will when the World Cup starts, I think the Brazilian people will be more connected with this World Cup than the other recent one. So yeah.
But I'll maybe would like to say this: at the heart of football, though, is one word. It is winning, and Africa has never won a World Cup. So and I mean, I'm not going to lie here. Africa is losing the World Cup.
But a lot of people thought Senegal would have a good chance this year. But
yeah,
now
with Mane out,
with
Mane out, disqualified, I'm not sure they're going to go that far. Maybe, but I'm not that sure. What I'm going to say is that the World Cup, because even though African teams perform so well there, they still lose. So we cannot, see eye to eye with, Emilio, Andres. We simply cannot, because we have a long stream of losing. So where there is action for Africa, from my standpoint, is the Africa Cup of Nations, because that is where Cameroon indeed wins, and wins all the time. So therefore we have a cup, and we can actually feel like it, you see. And even Samuel Eto'o, he has lots of ideology, lots of, the type of motivational speeches that football players always use. The ball is round, that type of thing. But at the end of the day, he never won, a World Cup. So I'm going to see how he's going to twist it around again this time to say we lost, but we won.
But there will be, you know, Patrice, there will be one day when this is going to happen, because we've been seeing for almost 30 years
Yeah.
an African surprise and or candidate. Cameroon, Nigeria has had very good chances in
Yeah.
2 or 3 of the World
Ghana.
Cups. Then Ghana, and I mean that's unavoidable, because the level of the African soccer is improving
Oh yeah.
all the time. So we are definitely seeing an African winner, and I'll tell you, I will be very glad to see it.
Oh no, that one for sure. You know, the thing is, European teams cannibalize African football, and it makes it more and more difficult for African teams to win. You know, because many, you know, the French team essentially is made of Africans.
Right.
So it's 90% Africans, if you want.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think we'll wrap up here. There are no questions in the chat. Is that right, Joel? And so the World
There's
Cup
been a
kicks off
lot of
tomorrow
lovely
morning.
comments in the chat, including a great
Yeah,
quote by
wonderful
Pasolini.
comments. Wonderful. Thank you, Andres, Patrice, and Emilio, for adding the authors and the other things you've mentioned into the chat. It's been a real pleasure, all 3 of you. I can't wait to read your books and your work. And Andres can't wait to read Bariloche. And Patrice, I know you've been working on your memoir. And Emilio, can't wait for something more from you. And anyway, it's just a pleasure to see the 3 of you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, my friends.
Thank you, dear people. It's been a pleasure and very fun.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Patrice, Andres, Andy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye,
Okay,
everybody.
bye. Enjoy
Thank
the
you very
cup.
much. We'll
Good
do
night,
that.
everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night from Brooklyn.
Thank you, Joel.